It's preparing a live stream, so
Oh, because it'll be recorded on YouTube. Okay.
I can't.
yes. Although I'll record on this computer as
It's
well.
it's just like a bright light right behind my head. It's making
Okay.
my head my me go dark.
We're live, folks.
Oh,
Well,
hello.
it says so, but I want to make sure. I just want to make sure that we get everything up and running. Um, it apparently is streaming, so I'm gonna put the link in the chat, and we can put this out. Oh, here we go. Oh shit, it's actually like
Like we are live, guys.
we
So
are we are absolutely live. I
hello,
have
hello
muted
world.
Hello,
I have
everybody.
muted myself on the thing, and now uh, I'm gonna post the link on Twitter, and then everybody can sort of. What I also want to do is I want to start answering like people's comments. Like I want people to sort of weigh in. That's the whole point of doing this live is that people can
So where are we finding the comments on your Twitter, on your tweet?
well, also on the YouTube link that I'm posting on Twitter now, which my computer is being slow, so that's frankly quite annoying. But
All right.
we're live. We're live. Join us and comment and ask questions and whatnot. As soon as my computer stops being very slow. Okay, so the reason I have called you here today.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Walker, do you have a tweet up right now? Did you do a new
I did.
tweet?
I just tweeted it.
All
So,
right, we
so
gotta
check
gotta
your
blast that out. So
yes
all of my peoples,
to, to all of your peoples.
all of
Well,
my
you know,
20,
Alex, if
27.1
your
thousand
peoples
peoples.
are involved, we're in good shape.
All right, well, let's
I
get
don't
this
know where
show
my
on the road.
here they go. Here we go. So now I'll be able to hear you, and everything will be. Okay. Can you both hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. This worked out perfectly. So, first of all, how are you both doing?
I've been better, but I've been worse. I feel the holidays during COVID is very strange. I feel like I've felt it feels more like a pandemic than it's felt since, when this is first breaking out in the spring.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Alex, how about you? How's your family? You just saw everybody.
Yeah, I saw my parents and one of my brothers and his wife and three kids for the first time in 18 months. I guess I should say my brother and them were 18. My parents were maybe like 9, 10 months. So yeah, it had been quite a while. But yeah, I'm from North Carolina, so we went down to the mountains to the western part of the state, and I hung out for 2 weeks on my own to quarantine because my parents are in their 70s and wanted to be safe with that. And then they joined me. So yeah, it was interesting, to be out there. We have internet and stuff, but it was just quite remote. I didn't have to wear a mask for days on end because I wouldn't see anybody. It was kind of crazy. Like it kind of centers you a bit. Um, and then after about 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, I'm probably ready to like talk to a human being.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and then like, but so I was like coming back to New York. I was actually like pretty. It was pretty exhilarating. It's like holy shit! Like we live in a society. This is
You're back.
fun. Look at all the tall buildings, man. Like I felt like a tourist, and yeah. Um, so yeah, but you get back into the groove pretty quickly, or the grind, I should say. Um,
So
never
you're
a
kind
dull
of
moment.
like Walden Ponding it down there a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, yeah, I took walks every
Oh, that's
day.
cool.
The I could see the stars are incredible when you don't live in a really polluted city. So, with like light and actual pollution. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. I couldn't believe that it had been that long since I'd left, but I guess you get better late than never, I suppose.
But everyone in your family is good. Nobody's
Yeah,
sick,
yeah.
and
Very thankfully, no one in my family has gotten it. To our knowledge, no one's been sick. My folks are safe. So yeah, I mean, just here reading about all the cases and everything every day, and it's getting worse and worse, and makes me feel very grateful.
Yeah, everyone in my family is so far so good as well, but yeah, it's fucking scary. It's a friend of mine lost their grandparent. Uh, Another person that I was talking to lost a sibling. I mean, this it's a devastating. It's a devastating virus that.
I, yeah, and as much as I mean, it's the only thing, one of the only things we've talked about for the last 8 months, and as far as public discourse and public awareness goes, I feel like we still don't appreciate the gravity of it. I mean, we're at now September 11th numbers every single day.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a tragedy on that order happening every single day.
Yeah. Wasn't it like
And
almost 2,400 people in the last count?
2,700. I think I heard
2,700.
3,000. I can't
Holy
verify
shit.
that, but the New York Times said 2,700, over 2,700 people on Wednesday. So, and it just
Holy crap.
keeps getting higher and higher. It's
No,
scary.
we've failed to contain that. We failed to respond. I mean, every what the reason that I wanted to do this is because I I'm having a difficult time just dealing with it. Like I don't sleep very well anymore. Not that I ever was, I've always been somebody who stays up super late, but like
Oh, you think?
yeah, yeah, but like I now like so my fiance I've been talking about this more now. You both know I'm you both know Michelle. So uh every day she goes into the office to work for a company which we will not name or describe in any way for the purposes of not getting her in trouble. But the fact is that her company brings her into the office every day, not because she can't work from home, but because that is that's the prerogative of her employer, and she's not alone. I mean, people all over the country are being brought back into offices, crowded offices together at the whim of their employers. That is a policy decision that is being made.
That that is, I mean, it's fucked. Those companies should not be shielded from liability. I understand shielding companies who employ essential workers that are needed to literally just keep shelves stocked with food, shielding them from liability from COVID lawsuits. But if you're gonna make your employees come in, expose them and their families to undue risk for no good reason, you should not be shielded from any sort of COVID liability.
The thing is, I don't I don't think any of these if you shield a company from liability, all you're doing is giving them carte blanche to treat their workers however they're going to treat them and ignore their safety. And I think that that is dangerous, whether it is an essential worker or whether it is a non-essential worker. And frankly, the effects that this virus has had on families across the country, I thought one thing Biden said during the debates was actually really good, where he said, a lot of people have an empty chair around the table now. And yeah, it's the sort of schmaltzy stuff that Democrats, talk about, but it's very real. Like this virus rips families apart. It is merciless and brutal. And I mean, we're all very lucky. All of us are the lucky ones. But it's going to get worse. The obvious answer all along has been to shut the country down and provide consistent, meaningful assistance to make sure people can float through a shutdown. That's been the obvious answer this entire time. And why we haven't done that is just, it's bananas. Like, batshit, bananas ass crazy. We screwed the
And
pooch.
it began as a Republican obstruction thing, right? McConnell wouldn't bring the Heroes Act to the floor. That was passed on, I believe, on May 15th. May 15th. We're months and months, a half a year ago.
But
And
even
then
that wasn't consistent aid. even that
Right.
didn't
No, it wasn't
continue.
even great, but I mean, I think it actually did have like the $2,000 a month.
It did
Wasn't that
not.
part of it?
It did not
Okay.
have monthly assistance. It didn't have rent forgiveness. It didn't have all of these things that we need. Like I don't. Those, the problem is that the things we need aren't even a part of the conversation. They're not. They're not even entering the mainstream of the conversation. Like we can talk about them on Twitter, and we do. We, you know,
But right,
you and
but
I.
listen, so this was like a $3 trillion bill. I think the members of the House knew it wasn't going to pass the Senate, but they did pass like a model bill like that after there were bipartisan bills at the beginning of the crisis. Um, and McConnell sat on it, but then as we got closer to the election, and Pelosi was allegedly negotiating with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, and Trump was kind of in and out. Maybe I'm for it, maybe I'm not, but he was kind of there. He wanted to do something, um, so he could sign his name to. Um, and we realized then Pelosi starts saying, "Oh well, this $1.8 trillion compromise just isn't good enough. We have to go back to our 2.8 or 3 trillion bill." And so she essentially, acting for every Democrat because she basically cut everyone else out of the equation, as far as I know, for the most part, was just like, "No, this isn't good enough. We're not going to do your bill." And now we're several months later. The election's over. Joe Biden is going to be president now, and now she's touting a bill that's half the size of that, nine
Right.
hundred
It,
million dollars,
it's disgraceful.
billion
It's
dollars.
disgraceful, and it prevents the blockages and the bottlenecks there. Just prevents anything else from getting done because you can't. It's so much harder to tell businesses, especially small businesses, to shut down if you're not going to make them whole, and you're not going to make their workers whole, and you're not going to give people what they need to
Exactly.
survive, because then you can't do anything else, because then you need to just keep things open, because otherwise people are going to starve if we're not. People rely on a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, and if you're going to tell them they can't work, then you need to back that up, and we haven't been able to pass any uh, legislation that will backstop them.
So in the comments, Extra Bulla says, so basically we're waiting on the Georgia runoff to see if anything actually happens. To me, that sounds right. That sounds like, yes, that is what we're doing.
I guess I
Um,
hadn't even thought about that. The next is that
Yeah.
really. I mean, is Pelosi continuing her ridiculous calculus that if the Democrats said, I guess the thing is, this is slightly different. There's no excuse for it, 100% no excuse, but this is slightly different than the general, where you have two non-incumbent Democrats running against incumbent senators who, if they do pass something, they can say, "Oh, we gave you this and that." Like, I don't agree with that. I think you have to do what's right for people now. Like, and you should have done it months ago. But at least if that is her, if that is her argument, which she'll never say, but like if that is her argument, there is some tiny like political relevance to that. Again, not endorsing it, but there is some political. Whereas in the general, there's nothing, because you had, first of all, 14 Dems lost their House seats. They lost them
mhm.
because they didn't run on things,
Yeah,
especially the
as
economy and jobs.
as you pointed out earlier, I mean, like anybody who's still defending Nancy Pelosi needs to get their fucking head checked. Like it is just it's not even funny. And like I get these people in my mentions that are like, oh, you sound like a Republican, or oh, why are you only criticizing Democrats? It's like, why do you accept a party that is so fundamentally inadequate and not even like, as I was saying earlier, the things that we need aren't even part of the discussion. They're
Well,
not even brought to the table.
I mean, I've written off the Republicans.
Right.
And so there's no need in my mind to spend much time. I mean, just turn on cable and flip to almost any channel. There's criticism of the Trump administration going on 24/7. Well-deserved criticism, but to really, I
Most of
think,
it.
affect a lot of it, uh, to really affect change. I mean, we need. I think you need to focus your efforts where change can actually, hopefully, be made.
But
Although
that's
it's
the thing.
becoming more and more hopeless.
Can it be made through the Democratic Party? And I I'm not convinced that it can. I don't think that this is a party that has any
I,
interest
I do
in.
think and Nomiki said this when we interviewed her on this on Gilded Age. I do think that demographics are in her favor, and I think that's ultimately what's going to shift it. I mean, the party leadership is, they're now octogenarians,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
young
Nancy Pelosi is held together
and
by like denture glue, hair dye, and disdain for the middle class.
She's 80. She's 80, and she's 100. She's a 114 millionaire.
and
I mean, like the idea that she can possibly know what it's like to be an average person is just preposterous. That she should be the one who is basically running. I mean, she's certainly running the House. She's still kind of in charge of the Democratic Party. Biden seems to be coming in, but as Biden comes in, we're
He's
seeing the party
also
is
like, is
listen.
Biden there?
Listen, I mean, whether or not he seems pretty like I hate to say it, kind of competent lately, but I mean, this is of course like on the backdrop of some very awkward campaign moments when he didn't seem very competent. But the point is, he's coming in, and the party's already getting more corporatized. Like, just today, Sludge had a good piece on Elaine Luria, who's one of the 5, I believe, freshman women in Congress from the last this session who are either ex-CIA or ex-military. And so they called themselves the badasses. This wasn't like anyone came and gave them the name the badasses. Remember, this happened during impeachment. They came
That's
out.
how you know it's a real power move.
Well, right. They call themselves the badasses. So Lane Luria is one of the many House freshmen and many now over 100, I believe, members of Congress who ran on no corporate PAC money. But Luria is the first one, maybe Max Rose, but Luria, I think, is kind of the first one to kind of officially just back away from it and say, okay, I did it for 2 elections. I mean, she did it for the first election. And then this time around, she took money from kind of shell PACs that basically collect, like they're not corporate PACs, but they collect money from corporate PACs and then give them to the lawmakers who say they're not going to take corporate PAC money. So it's just a shell company basically. So Sludge had a good article about how Elaine Luria is the first one, the badass, the first one to get away from that. Also like, Obama's first term, they had more restrictions on lobbyists and lobbyist money in the Democratic Party and the DNC than they do now. So we're already going back to like pre-Obama, like Clinton corporatism. And you're talking about how,
Well,
do you think the party can deliver anything meaningful? It is. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
no.
I agree with you, man. Like, I mean, maybe a year ago I would have said, it's still too early. We don't know who's going to. Nah, man, I think that's it.
I think so too. And look, I'll tell you what I think progressives need to do. I think, and I don't think they're gonna do this, and I think that's a problem. So first off, I think that like Omar, Ocasio-Cortez, Kana, Barbara Lee, Ayanna Pressley, Pramila Jayapal, like all of the ostensibly progressive people in the House need to band together and vote as a block every single time. And they need to hold up, because the difference between Republicans in the House and Democrats right now is something like 10 votes. And with that group, you have about 10 votes. You could swing the same way that conservatives do. You could cross the aisle to shoot down legislation you don't like.
Yep.
And
because sorry, Mark, but because the excuse me, the corporate Democrats screwed over the party, didn't run the economy. They lost 14 seats or so. Yes, this margin is smaller, which means that handful of the squad, which is now 6, maybe up to 7 or 8 by the time January 21st rolls around or whatever.
Bush, Jones.
Well, Bush and Bowman are official, and then there's, I don't know if Marie Newman's going to kind of be in it or not, but like, I don't know about Mondaire Jones. I hope he is. I mean,
they got to work on bringing them in.
So that's almost 10. So like they actually could make a difference. Whereas before we were saying, oh, it's going to be 20-25 seat difference. They need more. Not really. So I agree, man. I think they actually can do something. Also, the progressive the progressive caucus is getting small. They're tightening up their rules. They're making attendance mandatory and things like that. So it's going to be smaller and a little closer in ideology. It's still going to probably be too big to hold a lot of sway, but I think it will be a little bit better than it is now.
I completely agree, and I think, in 2021, as the emergency of Trump hopefully ends and the emergency of COVID hopefully tapers down, I think that there will be more room for progressives to focus on making stands like that, because I feel like everything has just been I mean, look at Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez's support of Biden. It's like it really felt like there was just no other choice.
Right.
and
yeah.
that's over. That's over now. That's not an
It's
excuse
done.
anymore.
It's not. I mean, and I'll tell you, part of the reason that I voted for the you know the ticket is precisely to say, you know, this is what you asked for. This is what we did. Now you told us push him left afterwards, so that's what this looks like. You know, it's not going to be pretty, but it's just what's staggering to me is that over the last like 5 years, the case for a socialist government has been made. It has undeniably been made. Wait, we have some comments here. I want to.
Yeah, we
Can
should.
you comment on Bernie saying that he'll vote against the relief bill? Does that? Hold on, let's see. I just lost my place.
Does that augur well for him voting against
Oh,
Neil
there it is.
Tanden
There it is.
for Office of Management and Budget Director? So it's kind of two questions.
Yeah. Okay. So voting against the relief bill is one thing. I think that's easier than voting against Neera Tanden, and I don't think it should be, but I think it's easier because I don't think Sanders and company are prepared to challenge the incoming Biden administration immediately, which I think is a mistake. If I were in the Senate and I were, you know, in the position that Bernie Sanders is in now, I would absolutely tell Biden, I'm going to vote against this person. I'm not even going to give them, if I'm in charge, I'm not even giving them a hearing.
And maybe
you have
he's
to
doing
meet
stuff
me.
behind, because you know Bernie is kind of diplomatic, so he could be doing stuff behind the scenes. I mean,
But that's not what you need to do. You need to approach them from the outside. You're never going to get anywhere working behind the scenes because they don't share the same goals.
Look, I mean, if anyone, Bernie knows this. I mean, he talks about the movement. I mean, he understands it. So if he's not doing it on the outside, it either means he's just not doing it, or he feels like in this particular case, we're in a lame duck period that the president is still refusing to concede. I don't know. I'm just saying, you know, we don't exactly know the longer term strategy for Bernie or what he's doing right now.
Yes, that's true. But I do think that it's unlikely that Sanders is going to stop Tanden. Although, frankly, people need to be calling into his office. They need to call Sanders. They need to call Markey. They need to call anybody, right. Elizabeth Warren, badger them. Hound them.
And I mean, any chance going forward that the Progressive Coalition has Neera Tanden or anything else where they have the ability to throw the wrench in the gear and stop it and say, you need to pay attention to us, you need to listen to us, otherwise you're not going to get the shit done that you want to get done. They need to take that opportunity now.
Yeah, but there's also probably a calculus where like every Republican says we're not going to vote for Tanden anyway. And so maybe they're just like, well, look, right. She's dead in the water. So why would we waste our capital?
Well, that I can understand that.
But she's not dead in the water if Democrats take the Senate.
Right. And so we don't know yet. The Biden people actually think that Tanden is a progressive. They thought that there's reporting that says like they thought she would actually be something that they thought progressives would like, and that's just hilarious.
I know. Owen Higgins did this reporting.
Okay. And that just shows you how out of touch the Biden people are. Like if that's what they've got. And then you have Elizabeth Warren, like, you know, like the second most progressive candidate in the Democratic primary, just endorsing Tanden. There you go. That's all they need, right? Because these people think Warren is like a radical leftist. So if she says Tanden's fine, then okay, then I guess Tanden's good. And I guess
that's insane to me. That is insane.
Well, the
Warren story over the last 2 years.
The Warren story has been pretty fascinating. Yeah. I mean, it really. I remember talking to Walker and I were having many conversations before we started this podcast, and he was telling me, nah, man, she's a fake-o. She's not really left. I was like, no, man, but like, you know,
I thought she was the real deal.
Like, look at her record. Like, yeah, she's not Bernie, but like she's pretty left. Look at all her great regulatory stances. She created the CFPB, like all this cool stuff. And then it's like, dude, Walker, you hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, I have to say.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Nathan Robinson, I think, really did a good job on covering Warren. But look, I think that the primary at this point needs to be put in the rearview mirror, because I would gladly welcome Warren into a coalition that stops people like Tanden from getting.
Absolutely. And I think she does have some lines. I don't think it's a Tanden, but I think like I think she'd be more likely to oppose people who worked at BlackRock and stuff, which many of whom look to be to take some cabinet seats or deputy cabinet appointments.
Hold on, there's
But
somebody just posted a snake emoji. I feel attacked.
oh boy, um, I don't want to. I don't want to. That's violence, guys. You can't do that.
Yeah, please
No,
refrain from bringing violence into our
yeah.
into our.
I will say I don't post snake emojis. I didn't want to get involved in that, but I'm also not going to claim it's freaking violence. Anyway, but we should get back to that question. Can we comment on Bernie saying he's going to vote against the relief bill? So yeah, today he comes out. It was good to see a strong progressive say, yeah, I'm not going to vote for this bill because it doesn't have the $1,200
And it has a corporate liability shield.
Basically, right? Yeah.
What this means, just for people watching, to explain what this means very simply, if you work for a company that they make you come into the office or whatever, and you get sick with COVID because maybe they're not following the rules as well as they should be, you cannot sue them. There is a federal shield in place, and that would cover federal and state lawsuits.
Is there no
yes, because of federalism.
And is there no distinction between essential and non-essential workers in this? It's anyone.
It's unclear what the language is going to be, but the language in the liability shield that Cuomo was pushing, no, not at all. So
but it's funny,
your boss can get you sick and you have no recourse. Sorry, but you have to work.
It's fucked. And honestly, but I do think a distinction needs to be made between keeping supermarkets open and food on the shelves, and I think those people should be getting hazard pay, like double pay at least, since they're our heroes and the essential workers. But if you're making your employees come in to like fucking open up Microsoft Excel and sit there for no reason, putting them at risk and their families at risk, that's a whole different level of wrong to me.
Let's take a step back and just idealize what would happen in a functioning country. We would be delivering supply boxes to people, including their prescriptions, groceries for the week.
Oh yeah.
We would have government workers doing that. We would employ people to do that. We would be sending monthly checks to every single person in this country of $2,000 or more, $2,500, $3,000. Fuck it, $3,500.
Sure, but it doesn't even have to be like that. I mean, organized. Like literally, they can just enforce some of the 6 feet rules, like some of the sort of COVID protections. Like that's the thing. If government agents showed up at the supermarket to try and do that, people would yell communism and stuff. But like, yeah, we would give people a ton of money, and they could spend the money, on themselves, so they only have to go out for essentials, or they can get deliveries, and they can stay in their freaking homes. Like France, when France did this, they told everyone to stay home. We're gonna pay 80% of everyone's salary, 80%.
Yeah,
right.
Why aren't we doing that?
Well,
I
mean, like
it
is most of your income. You can probably cover yourself with that for a lot of people.
The private sector has been taking over the role that government used to be able to play for the last 40 years or more. I mean, do you know who can deliver supplies to your house every day now? It's Amazon, and their stock prices doubled during this pandemic because we've outsourced it to them. Who's executing all the testing, although I still think we have a lot more work to do on testing. It's CVS and Walgreens.
And then two companies are in charge of all the labs.
Yeah. No, we have outsourced the roles that government should be playing to the private sector,
and that needs to change.
And we got backed into a corner with this pandemic. We couldn't change fast enough, and we had just completely gutted not only the federal government's ability to do anything, but the will to do anything.
I mean, the will to do anything wasn't there in the first place, because ever since Reagan and Clinton, I honestly think Bill Clinton was probably the most damaging president for his party that this country has seen in arguably ever. I mean, you could say Donald Trump, did more damage to the Republicans. I don't think he did. Bill Clinton broke Democratic brains in a way that
he was the first post FDR Democrat. He was the first neoliberal, truly neoliberal
and
Democratic president.
And because of Clinton, we can't we can't adequately respond to a pandemic. We can't have universal health care. We can't. America is a center right country. Fuck that. We like fuck it. Stop. Please, just like
It's incredible,
do something.
because I majored in music in college and I went to grad school for composition. So I ever since then I've had a long kind of education, self education, right? The more that I learn about Clinton, the more I realize just how fucking awful he was. He basically, I mean, like he turned the Democrats into like Republican light, like very quickly. Um, and then up to the very end, because we know in 2000, in the waning months of 2000, the end of his term was when they deregulated the financial markets, allowed for derivatives and things like that, which led to the financial crisis. Um, for one thing, at least I'm glad that the whole Larry Summers crew seems to not be making it into the Biden administration, which and
Everybody
who
can
was it?
pat themselves on the back for
I
that.
think it was Ryan Grimm's article in the Intercept the other day. It was very informative because he wasn't saying the Biden picks are good, but he was saying look at the Obama picks and then compare them to the Biden picks. And what's happening basically is like Obama was going like Clinton 2.0, and he was getting in like instead of Robert Rubin under Clinton, it was Larry Summers, right, the head of I think the Economic Council. So like he was getting like the proteges of the very Clinton people who screwed over all of us. And now it's like he'll weigh like one person who's kind of like tangential to that, and then he'll pick like the one who's like just like a boring moderate who sucks and like but like is not a Larry Summers, and that is something to like some tiny little
but a coworker of Larry Summers, or somebody who's worked with Larry Summers, or somebody
or just someone who worked at BlackRock and like who'd been responsible, wasn't powerful in the past, so couldn't have damaged our economy to that extent, but they worked at
like that's still a problem. That's still a problem.
Exactly. And Ryan wasn't saying it wasn't a problem. He's just saying this is actually like this is kind of like an incremental, because what Biden does is he kind of floats around in like the middle or kind of the right middle of the party. He always has. So like this is him doing that, which it just shows how the party has shifted, even though the people who lead it have not. The Pelosi's and everybody.
I do think that Biden will be less of a letdown than Obama, just because our expectations are, and it may just be because I'm older now, but
I mean, yes, it's if they forgive student debt in any capacity more than $10,000 like Biden was planning, if they do like $50,000 of student debt for everybody and they don't limit it to just undergrad, that'll make a substantial difference. It's not enough, but that will be a start. I think Matt Stoller said this. That I thought it was pretty astute back when he said it. That Biden will probably be a little more liberal than progressives think now, and that's a good thing. If he is, he'll that I'm open to that. But I look at the cabinet picks and I look at the solutions that the House is coming up with, and Pelosi, and it's very clear to me they don't got this.
Like, they
don't have it. And climate change is going to be an even bigger fucking disaster.
But they're going to be phased out just again because of demographics. And even now, I do think that they're starting to recognize that if they want to keep the youth vote like Democrats have traditionally had, they need to start paying attention to. I think they're years late, but I think there's some signals that they're at least starting to pay attention to what the under 35 crowd wants.
I don't know.
I mean, as progressive as millennials, where Gen Z is even more progressive.
For now.
The demographics thing is not,
now.
I don't think it's quite as clear cut because, we saw Trump did gain, although very small, but the fact that a white nationalist could actually gain support among Black and Latino voters. And of course, we have to caveat that by, no racial group is a monolith or anything like that. But overall, he did make small gains in those groups. And that's something to consider.
Gains from 2016, though, it's still worth noting that he did only win about 10%.
Less.
There were
very, very low.
Yeah, I mean that's typical for the Republican Party. I forget who it was. I think it was a former Nixon advisor was like, the Republicans don't need more than 10% of the Black vote.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, look, I mean, Donald Trump is just completely blatant racist with racist policies, trashing immigrants, people of color, every step he gets. And like that, sometimes like people, that's not, a lot of liberals think that's the only, race is the only issue. Like that's it. No, people,
And they tend to treat
people have,
racial
people are
groups as a
different. Everyone's
monolith.
different. And they want things that are going to materially help their lives. And if you're the liberal party and you're barely doing anything or the bare minimum to do that, and you're not even running on the accomplishments you do have, or the bills that you voted for that McConnell wouldn't put on the Senate floor that were good for people's pocketbooks or would have been, then yeah, that's going to happen. And I'm so like, demographics help Democrats, but not as much as people think. And I don't think it's smart to sort of rely on that. Like, I think that.
Oh, no. And it's, I mean, that's just like count. Yeah. The tide always moves in one direction. I mean, and yeah, people do. I don't think that we're going to see like the hippie to yuppie phenomenon that happened with the boomer generation
I
with
hope we don't see that.
with Gen X and millennials. I do think that maybe we'll become a little bit more conservative as the, you know, now 18 to 25-year-olds become 35 to 40-year-olds. Maybe they'll be a little bit more conservative, but I think these values are more entrenched than they were with the
Well, it's because we
the
came
boomer
into
generation.
Young people now are witnessing the failure of this free market dogma that has just been
'Cause we have no stake in it.
right. We don't. Yeah, we don't have any wealth. We don't own anything. And look, that may change as people inherit, because there is going to be a pretty large generational transfer of wealth as
Well,
boomers die off.
There's an
white
interesting
people
For,
point.
for white
inherit.
for,
I mean,
for white millennials.
You look at the wealth statistics for Black Americans. A lot of it's hardly anything.
Right.
Get that yuppie money.
But look, like the hippies turned into yuppies probably starting in the 80s, right? When like there was that fake prosperity under Reagan. Everyone thought like Reaganomics and free markets were good, and then Bill Clinton basically like put all that on life support for another decade. And so like so people became complacent. But I think, Mark, you're right. People are not, like, things are just getting worse, and like they're not gonna get better. Like it sucks, but they're not, like, they're just getting worse. Like look at what's happening right now. Like every time we have a crisis like this, a financial shock, then you got the big companies that eat up all the smaller ones, and that's just what's happening. And that's why you know Amazon, Facebook, these executives are doubling their wealth over a small period of time. So this is not bode well for the greater public, for people's average pay, for people's average wealth. So I agree. I don't think we're gonna a lot of these people really, I mean, unless things really change in the next 10 or 15 years, which again I don't think is going to happen, I don't think a lot of these young folks are going to kind of become more to the middle of the road.
But you know what scares me is that a government can't sustain if it doesn't meet the needs of its people. I mean, for a while it can, but for how long? For how, like, I it's just, I don't know. I feel like I'm somebody that is constantly looking at what's happening and just feeling like, oh, this is going to get a lot worse. Oh, this is just, there's no light at the end of this tunnel. And so, not to be a professional wet blanket, but I'm a bit of a wet blanket, and I worry that we aren't going to address these problems in time, and the people that come along to address these problems, will be people like Donald Trump. And I will say, I think part of why Trump had so much was so resilient this election is because he talked about trade in 2016, and he took a stab at NAFTA. And it wasn't a good stab, but he did take a stab at it.
Oh, he just put his name on it. He rebranded
He put his name on it,
which is
he
good
put
politics.
He put those tariffs on China, and I think that those two things mattered to people in states that have deindustrialized and lost.
But if they didn't actually observe what happened, like the tariffs on China were terrible for everybody. But it was just the fact that he did it.
But he did it. He did it. No president, no governing body, no Senate, no Congress has really just explicitly been like, you are gutting the middle of our country, and we're going to stop you from doing that. And if you are a CEO, you're going to be punished if you outsource stuff like that hadn't happened
from the effects.
He did a terrible job at it, but he said it.
He did.
And it was ineffectual, and it's probably going to just end up making things
But
worse.
I mean, that's the thing. Like with with viral media plus Fox News, he can just say something a million times. It'll get broadcast billions of times, and then it's almost as if he did something good. It's incredible.
But like even the negative effects, it's like, oh well, I did this and they're trying to screw me. And so people look at it and they believe him.
Well, look,
I really do.
he also gave. I mean, like I forgot the numbers, but pretty massive numbers in terms of stimulus to the farmers that he fucked over with the tariffs, because they sell to China, and when he did that, there's the trade war, then they couldn't sell to China as much, and he gave them tens of billions of dollars just like out of the blue. No one blinked an eye.
But they still supported him. Like
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like they got subsidies, so they're a lot. I mean, look, NPR I have issues with, especially their sort of one-off interviews, and they sort of characterize a
This is
greater
all
trend. But I
things
did listen to a
considered.
lot of those farmers in the NPR interviews, and at least the ones they chose, some of them were like, "Well, I know I'm taking a hit." They literally say this: "I'm taking a hit." But but this is good that we need to fix the China problem, and like he gave us some subsidies to help us out a little bit. Now that's not the majority. I mean, Trump lost the election. He lost by like 7 or 8 million votes. Probably by the end, it's going to be closer to 8 million. So I mean, like it's not like that's everyone, but like there are just people who think that way, and that kind of propaganda works on some people.
It does, and you make a good point that it's not it isn't everybody, but I think the interesting thing here is that the Democratic coalition, like it's not clear to me what if they have a sustaining one, or like if they do have a sustaining coalition, like what it is. Because now it's like they've combined the 90s Republican base, these like suburban wine moms, uh, with urban people of color and communities of color, and that's where they get their strong the activism, the people who turn out to vote, and they sort of get brushed aside when it comes to like the agenda. They're the we give them rhetoric and let them be our strong base of support, and then the wine moms are the ones who we cater to in terms of policy. That's the Democratic MO right there.
It's I mean it's at least 3 or 4 different parties under the banner of one party.
And how
I mean,
can that
a lot has
sustain?
been written about this, and the Republican Party is really in lockstep. You know,
Yeah.
30%. They are 30% of the country in lockstep, and then they can pull in another 10 to 20% as needed. But there's that really hardcore. I mean, it's rooted around Christianity, and just basically. I mean, just watch Fox News for a couple hours, and you'll get what that is. That ethos, and they've the mentality where they can just fall in line behind it, and
I mean, I think
incredible.
that's the thing. Authoritarianism is a tough foe because I think like this is if you have a sort of creeping authoritarian party, like they are going to do that, and then it's harder to counter them because you have this big tent Democratic Party, and that's a problem that I've had with this whole stupid dialogue around defund the police and like is that helpful or not to the greater. I'm like, listen, you have two major parties. AOC has said this. She's like, in another, if we had a parliament, like I wouldn't be in Joe Biden's party. We'd be in different fucking parties, right? They'd be very different parties. So why should AOC have to speak in a manner that Abigail Spanberger in Virginia might like? The Republicans are going to take the opposition or whatever. They're going to take the people they find objectionable or their voters are going to find objectionable, and they're going to pretend that the whole party is like that person. So they did that with AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and they're calling Joe Biden a radical Marxist. I mean, like it's absurd.
Which is absurd.
But I mean, it's like, so the idea that these centrist Dems who either lost re-election or barely squeaked out a victory, like Spanberger did, are blaming people like AOC. It's like, look, you're in a giant party. Like you probably range from like right of center to like to socialist. Like that's the party. That's a huge party. You can't ask someone who lives in a different state in a different district to campaign for you.
But this
It's
is what
on
I mean.
you
It's
because
not a
you ran a bad
sustainable
campaign.
coalition. They don't have like Republicans have evangelical Christians. They've got white nationalists. They have working class voters. Increasingly, white working class voters. Not increasing. They've been the party of white working class, but increasingly, the Democrats are losing working class voters to Republicans. That is a scary shift, or losing them to independents or whatever. that is a shift that they are becoming a party of exactly what the Republicans call them, very educated coastal elites.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Well,
if the
those are the people who run the party. That's for
That's the
sure.
people who run the party, and
But
they
they
are
run both
fundamentally
parties.
detached
They run both parties.
from the activist base, which are largely people of color who are demanding systemic reforms like defunding the police, and they're like, well, it's objectionable to us because these police are in place to protect our property. That's
Well, but
really
listen,
that's really what it comes down to.
I mean, look, the defund the police is not that broadly popular among most groups, and that's fine. My point is that, like, if you are by our current political standards, fairly radical person, you shouldn't have to curtail your fucking language to appease a bunch of centrists in Virginia and Kansas and
Especially
wherever.
if they are wine moms. Like we're not talking like no, but I'm serious. We're talking about like
No, but
relatively
Abigail Spanberger is
affluent,
a self-appointed badass. All right, I mean, you got to give her that. She's a badass. They call themselves badasses.
but like affluent white liberalism is the death of radicalism. And that's been true since since the fucking 60s. Like this is
Well, and one thing that the polling shows is that this whole fear mongering from the right about the suburbs and the Black Lives Matter and all the looting and all this horseshit, that didn't actually really
it
affect the
didn't
suburban vote. Like Biden
no.
did fine with that vote. It really, as you say, it is the working class. The people who are struggling, they are the people who you need to give something to. You need to make their lives better. And as we've said before in our conversations in this podcast, like, Biden and the Democrats have 2 years, maybe less, to deliver something. And then, as we know from the Democrats, they have to actually run on that something. They can't just do it and expect people are going to vote. They have to tell people, we did this for you. Jobs, economy. That is all that matters right now.
Otherwise you'll end up with somebody like Obama.
Well, at
and
best, and at worst, you're going to get President Josh Hawley. And look, Josh Hawley, the Republican
I mean,
from
Biden
Missouri.
will be at worst. Biden is somebody who's like Obama, and that is a catastrophe. Like Obama came into office with a fucking mandate. He had a huge majority in the Senate. Whether it was a super majority or not, I think is fucking irrelevant because we're already talking about needing to eliminate the filibuster to do anything. So where was this conversation after the worst financial collapse since the Great Depression? Like, where was that conversation then? If Joe Lieberman, if your entire agenda hinges on Joe Lieberman, who's being an asshole, you tell Lieberman, you know what, fuck you. You don't have any say. We're going nuclear on you, and we're gonna pass this. We're gonna pass a public option, or we're gonna pass single payer. He didn't need that. He had a mandate. He had the largest grassroots movement behind him. He had dual majorities in the House and Senate, and the perfect time to do it. He wasted all of it, and I worry.
No, they also,
if that was the opportunity, if that was it, like that was the moment we were going to do anything progressive, and after that, after we didn't, we cost ourselves, and we're not going to get there maybe for another.
Well, look, Biden's going to do the same thing as he's going to want consensus, and then they're not going to pass anything meaningful. That, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen.
We'll be talking fiscal responsibility within 3 years. You watch.
Less than that. Less than that. I mean, the GOP is already doing it, of course, because they're already pivoting because they've privately accepted that it's going to be Biden, so they are going to go back to starving the beast. And the problem is, even if I don't think he's not going to be like, oh, we have to cut entitlements like he may have a couple of years back. He's just going to be like, oh, well, we have no choice. We have to give them something.
Right.
Even if Democrats barely get the Senate in a couple of weeks, he's going to be like, well, we have to give them something. If it's bipartisan, then it's going to mean more, and it's going to be more credible legislation.
Yeah, he said he didn't want to embarrass McConnell. He didn't want any deal that would have embarrassed McConnell. Well, McConnell's been embarrassing the Democratic Party for years. So, and frankly, who gives a fuck what McConnell thinks? Like, people right now need help. We need to do more for people than we have done since maybe the 70s, 60s.
Yeah, Walker, you said that was our moment back in 2008 with the worst financial crisis that had ever happened. The opportunity was there. The stage was set to make real change, and we didn't do it. I mean, we're in a crisis that's arguably worse right now than what was happening in 2008. I
But
mean,
people don't have the same faith in the party. Back in 2008, Obama had so much good. He had all this good faith behind him. He had people believed in him. People trusted him.
maybe that's better in a way, because now Biden is going to be held more account than Obama was.
So that's a possibility, but I do worry that like, okay, so Biden gets held accountable. People call out his bullshit. At the same time, the stuff he does put forward, people don't trust. People don't have any trust in him, and so even the good things sort of get overshadowed. Because there will be some good things that he does. It's just every president in recent memory has done at least. Well, I shouldn't say that because I honestly can't think of anything good that George W. Bush did. Um, I mean, anybody? Can anybody think of that? Anybody in the comments? Can you help me
Well,
out here?
I
Can
think
anybody
he
think
may
of
have
anything good?
increased like international like support for HIV vaccines or something. That's about it.
He read that book to that classroom of fourth graders.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was upside down, but that's fine. It doesn't. He still tried. You know, give him a participation trophy.
He got a
Eiffel
shoe
Tower
thrown
stuff.
at him.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say that was probably his best moment because he was very agile. He ducked very
He
quickly
very
under that
very
shoe,
quickly.
and I was like, "Wow, this man! I want to have a beer with this man.
Yeah.
You know, he knows how to duck. Like, it's fine. He started 2 fake wars. Like, that's cool, but you know, he
But
knows how to duck.
when he said that was a 10, I mean, what a great response.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
Although,
anyway,
look, I mean, what I was going to say just earlier, and I want to get it in before I forget it again. Well, first of all, the other thing I want to say is that you guys told me we were going to be drinking during this, and I'm the only one who's had a beer, so now I feel like a jackass.
okay.
So
I'll be right back.
I'm like the guy drinking on live YouTube. Thanks a lot, boys. There you go, Walker. But the other thing I wanted to say, and I don't know, hopefully Walker can hear, is that, you know, we're talking about national politics, you know, and like
Yes.
that's obviously incredibly important.
Not terribly.
But you know, I think if we're talking about like real change, like the way that's going to happen, there you go. The way that's going to happen is at the local level, you know. And if you look at the you know, people who are getting elected to city councils, you know, school boards, there are a lot of socialists and radicals who are getting elected. New York is a great example. I think there's going to be 6 or 7 card-carrying DSA members in the state legislature next term. So like, you know, and then if you look at the local level, there's even more room for change because like there's just less money in those campaigns. It's just easier to get people in and then to do stuff. So, you know, I think like probably something of our podcast we should start looking at more, and really I think as a you know, sort of like as the left we should talk about more, is the local stuff. And I think, you know, organizations like DSA are already obviously very involved in these campaigns, and they're on the ground and doing local stuff. So that I think like if we're going to be fatalistic about everything overall in the national scene, I think there's a little more to look forward to like on the local level.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think progressives need to focus on state races. Really need to focus on state and local races. Take over state and local parties, county parties. Like infiltrate, and take over from the ground up. It makes it a lot harder to do shady shit if your party apparatus has been infected with progressivism, and that's really what the Democrats need. That's what the country needs. The problem is that's a long process, and we don't have terribly long. We're dealing with a pandemic right now. The response from the federal government has been completely inadequate. No aid is coming. The states have opted to reopen. They don't have much of a choice, but they're doing it. They're doing it really, really stupidly. Uh, I I think that people really need to get active. They need to get out. You need to go to town hall meetings. You need to go and protest outside politicians' homes. You need to put the fear into these people. Not I'm not suggesting violence. I want to be clear about this. I'm not encouraging violence, or threats of violence, but I am saying
Yeah,
that
please don't.
it's very hard if you are an elected official to stare down an angry group of people who are yelling at you and tell them something they don't want to hear. So that was a Tea Party tactic back in 2010. It worked. Nobody
Yeah.
else Nobody else has any thoughts on that? No?
No, I mean I agree. Grassroots is the way that this is going to change. It's so it's so hard to be sure what actually is grassroots nowadays, and these movements get co-opted and
Like progressive groups lining up behind Neera Tanden?
co-opted
like your
and
Daily
disperverted, and
Toaster
it can be disorienting and demoralizing.
Social
But
Security Works endorsed her and it said
What?
like, yeah, Social Security Works, a group dedicated to keeping Social Security healthy and alive and
5 years ago, you guys had her on video 5 years ago saying she wanted to cut it. Plus, and it wasn't just you guys focused on the
8 years
security, but
ago.
it was also Medicare and Medicaid. She's like, they all have to be on the table. You
But
know,
Cap's cuts to Medicaid were apparently not benefit cuts, according to Cap.
okay, great.
So that's a
sure.
caveat. But Social
PR.
Security, the chain CPI is absolutely a benefit cut. It would slow the rate at which benefits increase, which is
Right.
effectively a
Totally.
cut. So
Yeah, that's a classic way of cutting it. I mean the whole idea. I'm no expert, you know, but the whole idea about Social Security not being solvent is a lie, right? Like it's pretty good for like the next 3 decades. Is what I tend to see.
it's pretty good for a while. Look, Social Security, the easiest fix to Social Security is just raising the cap at which you don't have to pay into it. That's it.
Right.
Everybody
Yeah, I mean,
should pay into Social Security, whether or not you take it or not. Whether or not you take it or not.
I mean,
Gold,
everyone
people,
takes it.
gold.
Yeah.
Charles Koch Charles Koch gets Social Security. They all get it.
But it's
Totally
just
universal program.
it's crazy to me that progressive groups on the outside are like not challenging somebody like Tandon because thinking that they're going to work with they're going to be able to
some of
work
them
with the
are,
White
but-
House. You are not going to be able to work with this White House. I'm sorry, you're just not. So stick to the values. Like don't try to play politics with this. She doesn't like you and you don't like her, and everybody knows it.
Well-
She knows it.
So going back to Bernie, I do wonder how he's going to play this because he's getting to the end of his career. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's gonna be like a 98-year-old Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she's 88, but she's ancient Dianne Feinstein, like running committees by that point. But we'll see. But I mean, I wonder how he's gonna play it because obviously, look, he's a smart guy. He knows he's being iced out of the administration. I don't think he ever really thought he'd be labor secretary. I mean, come on, like that. No one really thought Biden was going to let Bernie be a cabinet secretary.
But he doesn't
I
have
think-
any progressives in his cabinet. He doesn't
No,
have anybody.
Not even a
And
progressive.
not a single
I mean,
one.
There is
And
like
that's
Jared what's his name? Jared
Bernstein,
I
but
think.
he supported with conditions. He
from
supported the chain CPI,
yeah.
which is
well,
the
what I'm
cut to
saying is
Social
like he is considered a pretty that sucks, but a bona fide progressive economist. But he's not a cabinet secretary. He is going to be part of the Economic Council along with others. So it's not
and not
like,
even the chair. The chair is
that's
somebody
the
who
BlackRock guy, right?
No, it's Cecile. There's so many names.
There's a lot coming.
So
in.
many
Yeah,
names.
I'm not familiar with her.
I found a
myself.
video of her last night talking about how we have precious few federal dollars and we have to prioritize how we spend them. Like,
oh yeah.
like this is. I mean, and I'm sensing here. It's Cecilia Roos. She said we have to make
she was
choices.
like in the Obama.
We have to make
administration too, or something.
choices about how we're going to spend our scarce dollars, and then she talks about like how we can get to a balanced budget. Like, are you? Mind you, this is 3 years. 3 years after the worst economic crash since the Great Depression. At the time, until now.
I mean, I do think they're kind of going to just do what Biden wants them to do. So that's kind of the question.
That's what scares me.
But they're also advising Biden. So it's kind of like it's like chicken or the egg. Personnel is policy. So what I was saying is that Bernie, he's pretty much on his own again. I think he doesn't even have really Warren on his side anymore. So I do wonder if he's just going to go rogue eventually and just be because, like as we talked about, Bernie understands that you need the people. If you want to make change, you have to have the people behind you. He's still got the people behind him.
The
Is he going to
only
use that in order to try and get little victories? I don't know.
I, I mean, maybe look. The sad reality here is that progressives needed to win in 2020, and they didn't. They needed to win that primary, um, and now we have Biden, and so it is Biden's Democratic Party. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
and I don't think that that is a party that is capable of delivering the kind of change that we need. As we were talking about earlier, it's not the things that this country needs to deal with COVID aren't even on the table. We're not even talking about them, and that is an indictment of our system. It is an indictment of both parties. But you got to work from the outside, and you got to work from the ground up.
Absolutely. I mean, I would like to think that um, under a president like Trump, that we would be looking for novel solutions and new ideas and ways to move forward, because obviously what we had been doing had failed. Unfortunately, I do think that the real psychology behind it is that Trump being president, and then the emergent COVID stuff that happened later on in his tenure, I do think that these really scary things that felt kind of urgent and like emergencies made people just want to go back to the comfort of basically Obama.
Yeah, yeah.
So I do think it worked against progressives rather than working for them.
Not necessarily. I think progressives made pretty big gains in the midterms.
Not
And
to
they
discount
made
any of the gains that they did make,
Yeah,
but
and I think that in a way, I think if Clinton had won, this whole conversation about progressivism we wouldn't even be having it, because it would be
yeah,
like, oh, you guys had these ideas, but we didn't need them, and we won, and Trump didn't win, so like populism came and it was gone, and that narrative wouldn't be correct, but it would be the narrative that media runs with. And in a way, we're seeing that still sort of play out. Like media is like, well, populism has lost, and but the tight nature of Biden's defeat, the closeness of it, how close he came in key states, and how badly Democrats did down ballot, I think has really thrown a wrench into that narrative.
Well, going back to what we were saying about how, I don't know, Biden's first term, like he could either be kind of given a pass or it's going to be really hard on him. He has very little time to accomplish. I do think in the short term, he's probably going to get a pass because he will do a lot more for COVID than Trump has ever done. I mean, it's pretty easy to top Trump with that. So I do kind of think that that's going to be the focus, and people are probably going to see some, like, after this just horrific hell winter. People are going to see some improvements. Like there's going to be national messaging on masks and just basic shit like that. And it is going to make a difference.
But
Um, and so I think that is going to actually prevent a lot of the critiques of Biden from getting through. And then eventually they will start to, but it'll be kind of late, and he might not really feel pressure to react to them until very late. That's kind of what I'm guessing is going to happen.
that's that's quite possible. But I do think that maybe in that scenario, um, where Biden does a little bit and relieves, like it will be on progressives to keep the conversation going about like what more we could have done. Because I don't think Biden's response is going to be anywhere near adequate. Our government basically did this. They were like, "Oh, we've got this pandemic that we're worried about, or that we've got facing us. So what are we going to do? Well, first we're going to put it on the states. It's up to the states to respond how they're going to
And then
respond.
not bail out the state governments. They're bleeding cash.
Right. But also we're basically going to punt until there's a vaccine. That was Trump's plan. Um, and I think Democrats were like, well, we gotta like really target aid to those who need it most, but at
No, I
a
mean
time
Trump's
when
plan was
everybody
worse.
yeah,
Trump's plan was herd
but
immunity. It was
it
herd
was
immunity.
all it was
Scott fucking Atlas, the COVID advisor who resigned recently, who's like a osteopath or something. He has absolutely no qualifications. Said, yeah, he literally
sociopath.
talked about herd immunity. Just complete bonkers shit. And that's what happened when you see, look, Turning Point USA, they're having an in-person conference in Florida. just it's coming up. There's going to be hundreds of young people not wearing masks. The masks are recommended, but they're not required. So no one's going to wear them. This is a bunch of right wingers.
Can't tell me what I'm going to do on my spring break. Okay.
They're gonna just kill each other. Like it's unbelievable, man. Like it's, and I don't even know if these people are gonna get the vaccine. So that's a whole other question.
It's really scary.
Well, I was reading something, and look, I don't want to discourage people from getting a vaccine. That if it is, if you know, that the CDC is recommending you get, but I saw something like the head of Pfizer, somebody was like, we don't know if people can still transmit after getting the vaccine, and it's like, well, like this is, if you're telling people that this isn't a rushed process, don't say shit like that. And I'm not saying I'm all for the full disclosure. Like, please, that's my bread and butter as a journalist. But it's very obvious that this vaccine has been rushed because we don't have any political will in DC to provide aid to people so they can shelter in place at home. Like, the safest
right. But I mean,
the safest path would be for every single person in this country to shelter in place at home and have the government provide enough for them to survive doing it.
No, that's true. And that's what a lot of countries did in fucking March of 2020. But like, that is never going to happen in this country. So like, we do have vaccines coming out, but I think, the issue is, I think the guy's
Don't
right.
Accept that. Don't accept that.
There hasn't, well, yeah, no one should, but there hasn't been time. There hasn't been time to check how long does the vaccine even work? We don't know anything about that.
No, there's still so many unknowns. I mean, we don't even understand this virus yet. I mean, there are cardiovascular symptoms coming up in some people, neurological symptoms coming up. Like we don't. This is still so new, in as far as virology and epidemiology goes. Like, we've only known about this virus for less than a pregnancy, basically. What 9 or 10 months?
People are weary, but I really do. I think something that has shown true during this, that I've been sort of surprised almost by, is just how powerful it is what the people at the very top say consistently. And like, I mean, Trump has unearthed this. I mean, it's not all him, but he has been largely responsible for this anti-mask shit. It's him. I mean, it comes from the very top.
The fact that it's political is just laughable.
Yeah, I mean, most countries it's not fucking political. He encourages the worst far right extremists and conspiracy theorists who are pushing this stuff as well. And then he, like I said, he promotes people into his administration like Scott Atlas, who said the same stuff. So,
but you know what? If people had faith in our government, in the people who are experts and whatnot, if government had done a better job, and this is what drives.
I'm just saying, like, look,
absolutely
Trump,
insane.
They couldn't. Like, look, Fauci was in this crazy position where he didn't want to get fired because he wanted to try and help things, but then he couldn't really. But
no,
because
look,
he didn't want to get fired, he couldn't
disagree.
say a lot of stuff.
Trump is a fucking disaster. I totally agree with you. But what I'm saying is, what drives me insane is that we tend to focus on that. We look at Trump and we say, oh, he politicized this, he did X, Y, and Z, and he did all of those things, and they were disqualifying, and it is good that he lost. But, and this is important, if people had faith in the government, in the systems that were in place before Trump, if they had faith in experts, if they felt that experts were looking out for their best interests, and they had something tangible in terms of policy that they could point to and say, like, the experts told me this was good, it materially affected my life in a very positive way, they would have more faith in government. We don't have that today because everything has been super means tested. Everything is complicated. It is difficult, and people have been struggling and suffering long before Trump got in. We had 40% of Americans who struggled to afford basics. 75% of full-time workers were living paycheck to paycheck when Obama left office, despite his economic advisors, his experts saying that, we have things under control. All I'm saying is, if you want to deal with a crisis like COVID in the future, because we will have to with climate change, if we are going to deal with a crisis like COVID in the future, we need a government that instills faith in people.
No, I agree. And I'm sure the government in 2016, people's trust in government was less than it was prior to that at some point. However, I'm saying it really wouldn't have mattered. Like when you have a wrecking ball as a president, like it's all gone. Like truth is out the door. Like I don't think it would have made a difference.
But
And
you
like the
wouldn't get a
people,
wrecking ball president, is what I'm
oh,
saying.
okay,
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, he's there for the same reason that people
Right. Well,
won't
yeah,
wear
if
masks.
that's the conversation, sure, I agree with that. But I'm just saying, under the circumstances during while Trump was president, like the few competent people who actually had a mouthpiece, or at least had a mouthpiece between being muzzled by the administration, like someone like Fauci, you know, there wasn't a whole lot more they could do. That and they were just trying to say something, and if they went too far, he would have fired him. And like I'm just saying, it sucked. The whole thing sucked because you have a lunatic, psychopath, negligent, homicidal president. At best, he's negligent, homicidal. So I mean, like I do think because the bar is literally like beneath the earth, it's like a subterranean bar that Trump has set. Like Biden will be much better with COVID, and I think that
I
is going
hope
to
so.
make a difference. I
I
really
hope
think
so.
it's going to make a difference.
I hope
It's
that
not
his
going to solve
response
it,
is more than Hoover-esque, because I am
and like
not
Yeah.
hopeful.
they're not going to give people enough money or any more money. But I'm saying in terms of actually
But
facing
that is
the
a
health,
failure.
absolutely, it's a
We
failure. Come on,
we,
we
It's
we,
all
one
we all agree.
that 100% that negates anything else in my mind.
Look, it's really it's stupid. It's terrible. But I'm saying like there will be good messaging. The whole government's going to be like PR campaigns, like wear your mask, do your duty, like keep your
But
brothers and sisters safe.
That's what Cuomo's doing in New York, and every morning my fiance wakes up and goes into an office building despite the fact that she could
Look, it's
do her
not
job
going to
from
be
home.
sufficient. I'm just saying,
That is
Walker, it will not be sufficient. It will be way better than a crazy white nationalist president. That is really
I'm
bad.
not disagreeing, but the testing site that I was just at to get tested for COVID because I had a cold earlier in the week,
Yeah.
had a 15% positive rate in Brooklyn. And I live in,
In a
as you
particular
know,
clinic,
like
that's
a
really freaking
relatively
high.
low income area. It's just
That's really high.
unfortunate
is
reality.
very high.
But yeah, it's very high. So in a state where the messaging is good, where you have a governor who's like, wear a mask, wear a mask. It's bullshit. Messaging isn't enough. People need,
Right, but also look, we live in a
tangibles. Give
yeah,
people.
but also we live look at Staten Island, man. It's full of Trump people, and their rates are much higher. And like it's like climate change. Like people do like the weather moves, and so do people between boroughs and cities and states. Like when you have a segment of population who just completely ignores science and doesn't really give a fuck about other people's health, then like it's going to bleed over into areas that are actually paying attention. So yeah, it's not going to be solved by a President Biden, but my argument is that it will be better, and therefore, I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of scrutiny into the other shit that Biden's doing or not doing.
I hope so. I would encourage people watching this to be
people.
Yeah, I know. Look, hey, look,
But then
it was less earlier. I'm happy with
I
10.
appreciate y'all in the chat. By the way.
We do yeah. I look, I like this. Somebody here from Fort Greene. Fantastic.
Oh,
But yeah, look, it's not enough to complain about these. Like people need to be calling in to their representatives. They need to call in to their senators. They need to demand more from their government because messaging is not enough. Simply saying wear a mask, personal that puts the blame on you. That puts the blame on you and says if you're not responsible with your mask, if you get sick, it just means you weren't responsible. Bullshit. If you have to go into an office building, you can be as responsible as you want. But if you're surrounded by people who are not responsible, or if you're surrounded by other people, like that's not safe. That is a policy decision. That is something that we should not be allowing. That's all I'm saying is government needs to do more to improve people's lives. And if that in that event, people will have more faith in experts because they will feel that that when somebody says this is good policy, they
trust them. Yeah, no, I mean you're not wrong in general.
Like this is the problem. Like people talk, there's this fake news thing, or like the hysteria around like fake news. It all stems from the same point, and that is that our government has failed us for decades. Since the Reagan years has been slowly reaching this point.
And purposefully, deliberately.
Yes, for the enrichment of a propertied few.
Yeah, they don't want the government to be able to do anything, because then it makes it harder to make an argument for raising taxes and having the government intervene in places that could be profitable for the private sector.
I haven't seen
I mean,
Mark take a sip. I haven't seen Mark take a sip in a while. Mark.
I don't.
Mark's-
I'm done
he
with
doesn't
my
have a
thing.
beer, Walker. No, he didn't have one. He completely left us by ourselves to have our alcoholic adult beverages.
I will preach it. Thank you. Yes, I know. I feel like Mark is. Mark, are you being a wet blanket today? You're being a little bit of a wet
I
blanket.
am never a wet blanket. Never.
You know, it hurts me when you leave us out like this. If you're...
But also to respond to some of these comments, yeah, I was in North Carolina for 3 weeks, and I was living somewhere I had to take the trash and recycling to like a recycling center, and I don't think a single person every time I went there, no one was wearing a mask there. I was the only one, and I was kind of like, are you guys gonna make fun of me for wearing a mask? Not that I gave a shit. I'm like, I'm wearing a fucking mask.
No, you're tough. You're tough.
But it was like I'm the only person like within miles who has a mask. Like, are you fucking joking? And North Carolina is not doing as well as New York, and that it's like New York's been pretty bad, but like we're up to like 5% positive testing rate in the state, which is pretty scary given that it was like under 1% or 1.5% for a long time.
It just keeps ticking up. But it's your fault for not wearing a mask. It's nothing to do with policy.
It's everything, but look at South Dakota. Look at North Dakota.
I know it's worse in other places of the country.
It's
Ohio.
It's orders of magnitude worse. I mean,
yes,
it's terrifying. Montana's getting really bad, and it's like, man, and they have a Democratic governor for another month. But I mean, yeah, I do think like it just fits into this whole.
How does Montana get bad? They have like a population of like what 20.
Probably for that reason.
It is not meant to be dismissive.
No, but I mean,
love Montana. I've been there many times. It's great. The people.
No, apparently in like the Glacier National Forest area, which is like, very remote, but also a tourist area. It's one of the as of like a week ago, I read an article in Stat News that was one of the highest rates in the country. South Dakota is the highest incidence of COVID in the entire world right now. I mean, that's how, and Kristi Noem, the governor, refuses to put a mask mandate in.
Well, that's a real shame because South Dakota has a significant population of Native Americans. And
exactly.
That demographic has been hit quite hard.
Yeah, totally. And that's terrifying. So I'm saying, like, in California is pretty bad. It's a weird, large state, but I don't think New York's we're not going to get to where we were last March. Like, people have been through it.
But 15% is already at this testing site is already where it was in April. So that's
that's horrible, but that has to be an outlier. This
is a largely working lower income area of Brooklyn where I got tested, largely Black and Jewish, and that is really troubling because when we say, oh, it's not that bad, well, it's bad for some people. It's bad for the people who are affected by it, and maybe that doesn't reach like wealthy Manhattanites, but like I do wonder about how many, as Biden said, how many people in the neighborhood that I'm in have an empty chair now, or have lost. How many people have lost people? It is staggering the effect that this has. You can't even. We've all dealt with loss. I'm sure everybody has lost somebody at some point in their life, but like, you can't put it into words, and you can't quantify its value or its damage. And so when we hear numbers like 270,000 people have died, like we can't process that appropriate. There's no way to process that.
Well, what Mark did was good. He's like, it's like it's a 9/11 every fucking day. Think about it.
Yeah, remember. I mean, everyone remembers where they were. Everyone was alive then. Remembers where they were when that happened, and that's happening every single day now.
An American dies.
It changed the course of history. One day.
Every 30 seconds, an American somebody dies.
But
that is somebody's family. That is somebody's son, daughter or husband, wife,
Yeah, then there's the
sister,
personal. It's beyond a number. It's
yeah.
270,000. It's just
And
it's abstract.
to those
There's
people,
a
it is a fucking atom bomb.
yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get at here, is that like we don't put an adequate value on human dignity and human life, and that extends to Democratic governors. It extends to Republican governors. We don't value each other enough.
And to be pouring gasoline on that fire unnecessarily by having people come into an office again to like open up Microsoft Excel and sit together and just
crazy.
through all their commuting and through all the contacts they have with their family and friends to just increase the risk by some unknown quantity for no reason is just it's indefensible, and it shouldn't be happening. And it's because we lack leadership at the state and federal
so
level
maybe
to
next
say
time
that's not
we should
good.
talk about like okay, so we've obviously established it's obvious, yeah, like the real key to this is giving people a ton of money and telling them to stay home. So what is the most
Very
likely
simply.
no, like I mean, I agree with you, Walker, of course, but it's like how do we at least like try and make that happen? Maybe we should have some activists on here or something.
Yeah,
We can talk about how shitty it is forever, but like
let's we should have someone come on. That should be our next
let's do it.
our next thing. Who knows more about this than me? I'm gonna have
ask,
to hop off.
Mark,
soon.
you've been wonderful.
I love you both.
You know
I love all of our listeners, all of our streamers.
I'm glad that you're safe, Mark. It's important. It is important in a crisis like this to tell people how you feel about them. Mark, you are the butter on my bread.
You are my sunshine, Wugger. and Alex.
Yeah, thanks. I was waiting.
Well, Alex, you didn't call me the butter on your bread, Alex.
I didn't. I know. I just thought it was implied. It just sort of
you're more margarine to Alex.
Margarine.
Okay.
Well, I grew up having to eat margarine, man. That stuff's terrible. It's just like 1,800 chemicals put together into like a compound that like you can't digest. It's bad. Anyway, so no, you're not margarine, Mark. You're good, wholesome, churned, salted butter. That's what you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
From Ireland.
I wouldn't call anyone margarine. I wouldn't call my worst enemy margarine.
Yeah.
No insult meant to anybody who does eat margarine. Does anybody
eat margarine? It's not real food.
I don't know if I've ever had margarine.
It also doesn't taste like anything. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
it's very weird. I don't think anyone eats it anymore.
Try being old and growing up with bacon grease. That doesn't sound. I don't know. I don't know what margarine tastes like. So maybe that's
Well, now there's like other better substitutes that.
I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe it's not.
No, but like more recent stuff. Earth Balance. I think that's what my dad uses. Anyway, just saying, I'm not trying to market a product here. Just don't eat fake food is the message that we're all trying to leave this conversation with a good message. But my message is, yeah, wear a mask and don't eat fake food.
Wear a mask, don't eat margarine.
Where does everybody stand on ghee?
Ghee's awesome. What? Ghee's reduced butter. It's like it's essential for a lot of Indian recipes.
Okay. Let's all listen to some Joy Division. Well, I want to thank everybody who has stuck with us for this. How long have we been on here? For an hour and a half?
Close to that.
Yeah, almost.
Close to an hour and a half. Yeah, I want to thank everybody who stuck with us, everybody who asked questions. You're all fantastic. I hope that your families are safe. I hope that you're all safe, and that you're not being compelled into unsafe work situations. I hope that we are able to come out of this. I hope there is a light at the end of the tunnel. As negative as I am on Twitter, I try to be a positive person. So if you're watching this, thank you. Stay safe. Take care of the people that you care about. Tell them that you care about them. Life is short and precious.
Walker will be, his sermon on Sunday will be at 11 a.m. live streamed at this location. Check his Twitter feed. Follow Walker back on Twitter for the exact link. No,
Did you
no, I
did
no.
you see the guy the guy set to heavy metal, the pastor who's like I condemn you
Oh yes.
coronavirus set to the guitar like
That's what we need.
Oh, I admit that I saw the guy,
That's
the
what we
laughing
need. We
guy,
need
the
more of
really
that.
creepy laughing
no
guy,
no
who
so,
you thought was from a Tim and Eric skit, but it was actually a real person, like laughing to his. Remember, you see that one? It was crazy.
yeah no there was this guy who I don't know his name. He's a televangelist and he's like I condemn you and it's and this guitar player, this like heavy metal guitar player is just like playing music along with it. It's hilarious. It makes it very tolerable to watch the sermon.
I
Let's
will
get that
definitely
link in there.
check
Let's
that.
get
Send me
in
the
the
appropriate
description.
link.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll try to find it again on Twitter and I'll reshare it. And everybody follow Mark. Mark has less than 1,000 Twitter followers. He needs more
Don't
Twitter
tell
followers.
everybody that.
Oof.
It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. It's more embarrassing for us than you.
Hey, we've all been there, man. You got to start somewhere.
It's true.
Mark's not a big post. He's not a daily poster, really. You know, you
I
gotta be a
try. I
daily
try to. I try to get something up. I go in spurts.
Yeah, no, that's I have a lot of friends like that. They're like, I want to do it, but it's actually really toxic.
It's
Why would I do
it's
this to myself?
it's not just it's tough. It is tougher. I mean, guys like you that are cranking out 24 tweets reliably every day. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah, it's a
respect it.
factory over here.
I respect the
Yeah,
hustle.
I got employees just cranking out those tweets, man. It's amazing.
Yeah, you gotta hire a good help.
But I will say, after being
It's
in,
good.
in like,
There's some good quality tweets though coming. I'm
Good
less
remote.
less quantity.
Yeah,
I think less quantity is always is something to work towards. But when I was in North Carolina for I had internet, like I said, but like
we get it. You left the city. No, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm really cool because I did that. I'm super cool. But like I was less on Twitter, and it was kind of nice, and I'm back and I'm reporting and I'm tweeting my stories, but I'm trying to tweet a little less. I mean, granted, if you look at my feed, you're gonna be like, "What are you talking about, dude?" But I mean, it is actually less. So
You got to find that good balance.
First thing I do every
Mark
morning
balance.
when I wake up is check for the Alex tweets.
That's
Thank you,
I
yeah.
mean, the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is text Alex. And that's and then I go on Facebook and I look at his I try to find his profile and see if
Well,
it's still
frankly,
up.
I don't really tweet that early. I usually try and do like Sudoku or crosswords, like try to just chill. Drink my
How old
coffee.
are you? What?
Older than you.
Ugh.
Sudoku is really, it's really fun. I've been doing it for a few months obsessively. I love it. I mean,
Alex
crosswords.
can't wake up.
Crosswords
without
was
his
my
morning
fad
prune
before
juice.
that, and I've kind of transitioned to Sudoku. It's a little more mindless, you know. It's just numbers. It's kind of nice.
All right. Well, look, we've kept people long enough. Let's call this.
Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Good night, everybody. This has been Gilded Age. That is our podcast. Subscribe, listen. Alex puts a hell of a lot of work into the editing, and I know he would appreciate it if people listened.
That's right. We'll put all the information in the notes here on YouTube so you can see it. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Alrighty. So how do I